Hi, and welcome to S for Science. And on average, a person has 350 friends on Facebook. In 2013, a study was carried out which analyzed the data of all users of this social network in the world. And graphs like this were made, in which you can see the number of friends based on age. Or this other one that shows the marital status of users based on age as well, where a considerable decrease in the number of single people stands out as the years go by. Sounds good, but the most interesting one is this one, the distribution of number of friends per user. It has a peak of 250 friends and it decreases little by little. You see that little orange bump at the bottom right? It exists because the limit of friends on Facebook is 5,000, so all the people who have 5,000 friends or more are accumulated there. It's the point where Facebook considers that you can no longer have more friends. But really, how many friends can we have? Dunbar's number is the maximum number of people which we can maintain a stable social relationship with. Said number was developed in the 90s by the anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who theorized that its value was approximately 150 people, based on the size of the cerebral neocortex and its processing capacity. The origin of this number dates back to the first primatologists, who noted in their research that given their highly social nature, non-human primates have to maintain personal contact with other members of their social group. This suggests that depending on the species, the maximum number of friends varies depending on the size of the neocortex of the brain of that species. But what is being friends with someone? Every day, and depending on where you live, you can cross paths with thousands of people. Of all this, you will only know the name of some of them. In fact, of a very small fraction. But knowing the name of someone and greeting them on the street does not mean that we are friends with them. They are only acquaintances. Dunbar's number refers to the number of people you can have a relationship with that involves at least a minimum of trust and obligation, a personal story that goes beyond knowing names and faces. During his research, Robin Dunbar found the size of historic tribes and villages to be similar to what he had previously calculated. He found 150 as the estimated size of a Neolithic-era farmer village, 150 as the breaking point and separation of a Hutterian settlement, 200 as the maximum number of scholars in a subspecialization of a discipline, 150 as the basic size of a professional military unit in the ancient Rome, and in modern times since the 16th century. Currently, many economic manuals or books have been written, basically trying to explain that if you want a company or organization to work perfectly, it's advised that it shouldn't exceed 150 individuals. A clear example is that of Gore-Tex, a company of neoprene suits, hiking boots, and ponchos. Its founder decided to hit Dunbar's number and divided all his employees into small factories of up to 150 workers. In those factories, everybody knew who was the manager, who was the accountant, who was the one who made the sandwiches for lunch, and then the company's numbers started to go better than ever. Since 1984, the company earns a place in the US Fortune magazine's annual list of the 100 best companies to work for. In 2015, for example, it obtained the 17th place. Facebook and Twitter are depicted as the main social networks. Their public data shows that together they get over 3 billion visits per month. These networks have helped many people to keep in touch, to be able to follow their idols, or even to make new friends. In 2009, a study was published in The Economist, in which it was analyzed the average number of people we interact with on Facebook. The result was that of the 350 friends we have on average, we only interact most frequently with 9. In 2011, Facebook did another study with all the active users of their page at that time, who represented at that time around 10% of the world population. And the set of mutual friends were analyzed to make an average of how many links there are between a certain user and any other, excluding celebrities and famous people. The results showed that 99.6% of users in the world are connected by only 4.75 friends on average. This is to date the most important evidence of the 6 degrees of separation theory, a hypothesis that tries to prove that any person on the planet is separated by only 5 people from any other person. That is to say that between 2 people there are only 5 intermediaries. This is something that is represented in the popular phrase, "the world is a handkerchief." Following this theory, the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend is my friend. The small world experiment was a not-so-small investigation carried out by Stanley Milgram, who demonstrated that human societies have much shorter interconnections than expected. The experiment consisted of sending packages to randomly chosen people who lived in the American cities of Omaha and Wichita. These random people received information about the purpose of the experiment, and they were asked to send in this package to a randomly chosen person who lived in Boston, a very distant city both geographically and socially. In the most likely case that the person did not personally know the recipient, the person should think of a friend or relative whom they know personally and who they believed were more likely to personally know the recipient. The first person would then have to put their name on the list and forward the package to the second person, and so on, until the package reached its destination. And then, when the packages arrived to the recipients, the investigators had a list with all the people through whom the package had passed. That is, the number of intermediaries. And despite the fact that many people refused to do the experiment, many packages reached their destination. And the average of people through which the packages had passed was 6. And this represents a definitive proof of the 6 degrees of separation theory, although Milgram never used this term. Currently, human societies are very integrated with each other, and this is something that deserves some merit, because on this planet there are more than 7 billion people. But with so many people, could there be someone identical to you? Although it is very difficult to prove it due to the complexity of human populations, the photographer Francois Brunel has dedicated the last 22 years of his life to finding couples of people who, despite having no family ties, are practically identical. During his search, he has noticed that in the most cases, the couples live close to each other. So yes, it is very likely that somewhere in the world, and much closer than you think, there is someone practically identical to you. But if you want to find your double, you will have to meet a lot of people. But how many people can we get to know? If we take into account that we live 78.3 years on average, and that we remember phrases from the age of 5, and we assume that we interact with 3 new people every day, and that a year lasts 365.24 days, it turns out that we will meet 80,000 people in our lifetime. But what would happen if a person decided to meet the entire humanity? If that person decided to meet as many people as possible? Well, if we suppose that that person had certain advantages to know people, for example, that people went to him, and if we calculate approximately that this person could receive people for about 15 hours a day, and we take into account that it takes about 5 seconds to meet someone, well, to shake their hand, this person would take more than 1,000 years to meet all humanity. So, it's physically impossible to meet everyone. But right now, how many people know you? Well, if we take into account Dunbar's number and add the average number of people that we know from our jobs, plus relatives, it results that approximately 189 people know you, which is not bad. We have already seen that it is impossible to be able to know everyone. But you can do something else. You can do something so that many more people know you. You can be a writer, you can make a book, you can be a doctor, you can be a scientist, you can be a singer, you can be a politician, you can try to change the world. You can do anything you like to make people remember you. To make people remember what you did. Because we're all gonna die someday. But we can make our legacy last in the memory of others. It's in your hands. Thank you very much for watching the video, and goodbye.